The security guard didn't even look at the old leather folder in the man's hands before pointing toward the exit. Mechanics stopped working. A few passengers turned to stare. Someone quietly laughed as the tired father, wearing faded jeans and a worn-out jacket, gathered his young daughter's backpack from the polished floor. The little girl looked up with confused eyes, unable to understand why everyone was treating her father like he didn't belong there. Then, just as another employee reached for the man's arm, the captain of a private jet stepped down the aircraft stairs, froze in place, and whispered words that silenced the entire hangar. "Don't touch him, he owns this airport." Before we continue this unforgettable story, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories that remind the world compassion still exists. The bright morning sun stretched across the runway as aircraft engines hummed in the distance. Travelers hurried through terminals with coffee cups in their hands, executives rushed toward waiting jets, and ground crews moved with practiced precision. Among the crowd walked Rowan Mercer, a quiet single father whose face carried the weight of years that no one around him could see. Holding the small hand of his 8-year-old daughter, Nora, he looked nothing like the powerful businessman people imagined when they thought of airport owners. His jacket had been repaired more than once, his boots were dusty from driving across construction sites, and exhaustion rested permanently beneath his eyes. Yet there was something calm about him, something steady that hardship had failed to erase. Ever since Rowan's wife had passed away after a long illness 4 years earlier, every part of his life had revolved around raising Nora. Business meetings became bedtime stories. Financial reports waited until after homework was finished. Every decision he made carried only one question in his heart: what would give his daughter a future filled with hope instead of pain? The airport had once been his father's impossible dream, built from decades of sacrifice and endless work. When Rowan inherited it, many expected him to sell everything and enjoy a comfortable life. Instead, he quietly reinvested every dollar into improving the airport, creating jobs, expanding facilities, and helping struggling families find stable work. He rarely appeared in public and almost never introduced himself by title. He believed respect should come from character, not wealth. That morning Rowan had arrived unexpectedly because Nora wanted to see airplanes before school started again. She loved watching pilots wave at children and dreamed of becoming one someday. Rowan smiled every time she pointed toward the sky, imagining futures untouched by grief. Rather than announce his arrival to management, he simply parked his old pickup truck near the maintenance area and walked with Nora toward the private hangar where restoration work had recently been completed. He wanted to inspect the renovations himself and surprise the workers with breakfast afterward. Unfortunately, the new security supervisor had joined only 2 weeks earlier. Determined to prove himself, he judged people by appearance before asking questions. The moment he noticed Rowan's worn clothing and dusty truck, he assumed they were trespassing. Without checking identification or listening to explanations, he demanded they leave immediately. Rowan remained calm, politely trying to explain they had permission to be there, but his words disappeared beneath louder voices. More employees gathered. Some exchanged amused glances, convinced another curious visitor had wandered into the restricted area. Nora squeezed her father's hand tighter as embarrassment spread across her face. She had never seen adults dismiss someone so quickly. The supervisor ordered 2 maintenance workers to escort them outside. Rowan refused to argue. Life had already taught him that anger rarely changed stubborn minds. He simply bent down, brushed dust from Nora's sleeve, and told her with a gentle smile that sometimes people made mistakes before they knew someone's story. His calmness confused everyone watching. Most people insulted in front of strangers reacted with shouting or threats. Rowan only protected his daughter from feeling afraid. As they reached the hangar entrance, the roar of a jet engine faded. A sleek private aircraft rolled to a stop. The captain descended the stairs, glanced across the crowd, and instantly recognized Rowan. His expression changed from routine professionalism to complete disbelief. Walking quickly toward the gathering employees, he removed his cap and greeted Rowan with deep respect before quietly asking why the airport owner was being removed from his own facility. Those nearby heard only one sentence, but it echoed through the enormous hangar like thunder. Every conversation stopped. Every tool fell silent. Faces drained of color as realization spread from person to person. The supervisor suddenly understood what he had done. His confidence disappeared beneath overwhelming panic. Yet Rowan did something no one expected. Instead of humiliating the man or demanding immediate dismissal, he simply asked whether everyone had finished the safety inspection on the renovated hangar. The question stunned even the captain. Rowan cared more about the workers and the airport's operation than his own embarrassment. Word spread rapidly throughout the property. Employees who had worked there for years hurried over, greeting Rowan warmly and kneeling to say hello to little Nora. One elderly mechanic hugged Rowan with tears in his eyes, remembering how Rowan had secretly paid for his wife's surgery years earlier without ever accepting public thanks. Another cleaner quietly recalled the scholarship Rowan had funded for her son after learning the family could not afford college. Piece by piece, the truth emerged. The man everyone had mistaken for an ordinary visitor had quietly transformed countless lives without asking for recognition. The supervisor stood frozen, unable to lift his eyes. Shame settled heavily upon him as he realized how quickly he had judged someone based solely on appearance. Rowan finally approached him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder instead of speaking with anger. He explained that airports welcomed people from every background every single day. If employees judged travelers by clothing instead of character, kindness would disappear from the place where journeys began. Rules mattered, Rowan admitted, but dignity mattered just as much. Nora watched her father with growing admiration. She had expected revenge after such public humiliation. Instead, she witnessed forgiveness. In that moment she understood something far more valuable than success. True strength belonged to people who remained gentle when they had every reason not to be. Over the following weeks, Rowan introduced new training across the airport. Every employee, from executives to custodians, attended workshops centered not only on security procedures but also on empathy, patience, and respectful communication. He shared no details about what had happened to him personally. Instead, he used anonymous examples reminding everyone that every traveler carried invisible battles. Some were saying goodbye forever. Some were chasing dreams. Others were returning home after unimaginable hardship. No uniform could reveal the burdens hidden inside a person's heart. The supervisor requested a private meeting with Rowan. Expecting to lose his job, he instead found compassion waiting. Rowan listened as the man admitted growing up in poverty, believing appearances determined survival. He confessed that fear of failure had pushed him to become overly strict. Rowan thanked him for his honesty and offered him another chance under one condition: from that day forward, every decision had to begin with respect. The supervisor accepted through quiet tears, promising never again to mistake clothing for character. Months passed, and the airport became known for something unusual. Travelers often wrote letters describing employees who went beyond expectations to help elderly passengers, frightened children, exhausted parents, and people facing personal crises. Small acts of kindness multiplied into a culture that visitors could actually feel. Nora loved walking through the terminals, seeing smiles replace impatience. She proudly told her classmates that airplanes connected cities, but kindness connected hearts. One rainy afternoon, Rowan noticed a single mother struggling with heavy luggage while carrying an infant. Before any staff reached her, the same supervisor hurried across the terminal, lifted her bags, found her a wheelchair for her elderly father, and personally guided the family to their gate. Watching from a distance, Rowan smiled quietly. Redemption rarely arrived through grand speeches. It appeared through ordinary moments when people chose compassion over judgment. Years later, Nora stood on that very runway wearing a pilot's uniform. The dream she once whispered while holding her father's hand had become reality. As she prepared for her first official flight, she looked toward the hangar where strangers had once tried to force them out. The memory no longer carried pain. Instead, it reminded her how one act of forgiveness had changed hundreds of lives. Before boarding, she embraced Rowan tightly. The tired father who had sacrificed everything now watched his daughter soar higher than he had ever imagined. If this story has touched your heart so far, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us kindness is never wasted. Special request: comment below with the words, "Kindness always wins," if you believe every person deserves respect before judgment. As Nora's aircraft lifted into the bright afternoon sky, Rowan remained standing beside the runway, not as a wealthy airport owner, but as a father whose greatest achievement had never been buildings, businesses, or airplanes. His greatest success had been raising a daughter who understood that true greatness is measured not by what people own, but by how they treat those who have nothing to offer in return. The airport continued growing, flights came and went, and thousands of strangers crossed its halls every day, never knowing the remarkable story hidden behind its success. Yet every smile exchanged between employees and travelers carried the quiet legacy of one ordinary-looking father who had been judged by his clothes, humiliated in front of his child, and then chose forgiveness instead of revenge. Long after the engines disappeared into the clouds, that choice remained the strongest foundation the airport had ever been built upon, proving that kindness has the power to travel farther than any airplane ever could.